let's take 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes I would say, to have some further interaction with our guests. That's why they are seated over there. Especially the kids, right? If you have any questions that you would like to ask them, you heard lots of good stories and examples from all four of them. Yeah, so feel free, it's, even amongst friends, ask questions. So we have another 10 minutes, you know. We are going to be sitting quietly until for those 10 minutes if there is no question.
Please ask a question. You're not going if you don't ask a question. There's no wrong question.
So Indraji has a question.
First of all, thank you so much. This was really resuscitating. We feel like, you know, it's like a new burst of life. Thank you so much. This question is for all four of you. So if you had to jog back your memory lane, and is there any one, like an incident or something which challenged you, and what do you want us to take away, like a value? Like, is there something that you would kind of give as an advice, this particular value, follow it every day? I know sir already spoke about gratitude. But is there any one value based on just something that happened and you think this is very important for all of us to have in every day, you know, as you wake up every morning? It's for all of you.
I'd like to start off that one if y'all are good with that. I feel as a woman, obviously I've had a little bit different experience than these guys up here in the military. And more importantly to my young ladies that are thinking about doing anything in life, do not feel like you cannot do it well. Do not let anybody dampen your light. There have been many a time that I've been questioned of what I can do and how well I can do it. And I do my job very well. I was a great officer, I was a great leader, and I did my job very well, but I was questioned every step of the way. And that made me be stronger within myself and be more confident. It was very hard to overcome that. I had imposter syndrome like crazy. Do I belong here? Am I doing this right? Am I supposed to be a leader? Oh, I was supposed to be a leader. I was supposed to be there, and I am doing it right. So when you question yourselves, especially you young ladies coming up through school and, you know, trying to think about what you want to do, be strong in your conviction. Be strong, you can do it.
So I got something. So don't give up. Like if you got something you're challenged by, see it through to the end. Be persistent. Get through it. So I'll give you an example. We were out at sea. It was 1983. I was enlisted at the time. So just let me back up a second. So a nuclear powered ship, you have systems that will automatically flood the reactor compartment if there was to be a leak to prevent it from like causing bad things. So you cannot pull into port unless those systems are working properly. So if you're out to sea and one of those systems fails, you can't pull in until you fix it. Because you can't be that close to land, because the issue is you could hurt the other population, right? So we had, our emergency diesel generators were part of that. And we had one of them that would not, so we had to come up to speed and voltage in 6 seconds to support the plane to get the water where it needed to be. I'll just go with that. So we couldn't, it was too slow. So they sent out the manufacturer to the ship because we couldn't figure it out. So the manufacturer comes out. They said, stop working, we're gonna get the manufacturer. I said, you know, we could probably get this done, you give me some more time. But anyway, they sent a manufacturer out. He couldn't figure it out. So he leaves. And so they're like, oh my gosh, we can't pull in the port till this is fixed, or we're gonna order a new one, what are we gonna do? I said, give me one more chance. So I was in E6 at the time, which is pay off your first class. So I went down into the diesel space, and it was an electrical problem, I was an electrician at the time. So I took apart the entire cabin and checked every single component in the cabin one at a time, and since we had one right next to it, I could take something out of this one, put it in this one, test it, see if it worked. Well, it took me about a week, but I finally found the problem. We ordered the part, got it fixed, and we were able to pull in port on time. But that, you know, that's persistence, right? That's not letting the problem beat you. Okay, it's continuing to work through it, and everybody has the ability to do that. Just a lot of people don't give themselves credit. But once you do something like that, it's the best feeling in the world when you go, man, I fixed this, and the guy that built it couldn't fix it. I mean, that was pretty cool. So that's the one thing.
I probably just got one or 2 points. you know, as someone who's worked in the civilian world and in the military at the same time, because I was in reserves and still had a full-time job, kind of, you know, doing that 1 weekend a month and all that kind of stuff. To his point, I think in the civilian world, when something goes wrong, you know, if it's in the military, we'll figure it out. We keep going until we get it figured out. And I've seen in the civilian world or private sector, you know, they'll just do something different or give up on it or just kind of move on and don't give people the opportunity to learn and figure it out and grow from it. I think that was an important piece. Another thing was when we first got in country in Iraq, actually we were in Kuwait before we went to Iraq. This was in 2004, early on in the war, and I'm in a tent, our whole unit, you know, so of the 200 people, there's probably 25 officers, because we're a very small group, majority of the people are enlisted. We're all scared. I mean, we're all human naturally, but this is our first time in combat. We're talking about this Iraq war. We're in Kuwait. We're in we trained for 3 days out in the middle of the desert somewhere. And just look on people's faces, and then I'm an officer, right? And I'm a leader, and yet we're all in the same tent together. We slept that night, woke up, soaking wet because of the rain and all that. But you know, how do you encourage people when they're just as scared as you are? And you can't show that sometimes, right? But the humanity part of all of us as people, I think is important. I think that's what helps the relationships in the military, is that we all get put in situations that we didn't ask for, but we step up and do it anyway, and we push through our fears, our training kicks in, and we get done what we need to do. And I haven't had many experiences other than teams that you work with. You know, you can be in a team, you know, IT team and all that, but it's not as different when it's a team in the military. From the training and the situations we're put in is different than anywhere else, and so I think that experience is great. And lastly, I'll say, in Iraq, dealing with the civilian population of Iraqis, I ended up having some great friendships with some folks in Iraq. I mean, you know, we're still friends today. We still stay in touch. And my thing was, I treated them with humanity. You know, I didn't look at them as an enemy. Some people, you know, because they weren't. They were just the civilians that lived in Iraq. They weren't part of the, you know, the people going against us or whatever. And so, you know, they had families. I actually I got an opportunity to go meet this one guy I was working with a lot. Did a lot of contracting stuff. They had a lot of business activity. But I got a chance to go visit his house. I met his wife, his daughters. You know, they all had their headgear on, but they allowed me in the home. They accepted me just as family, and it was a great thing. You know, when they visited the camp, I take them to the dining hall, and I didn't treat people differently because they're Iraqis. I said, no, it's humanity first. They're not the enemy, right? You know, we're in their country as well. But you know, but that humanity piece was important, I think, as well as we go through life and we meet different people from different places.
I'd like to pick up on that if I could. There were some things about Vietnam that I, to this day, still cannot and will not talk about, but in terms of dealing with people, I shared a hooch. A hooch was your dwelling place, generally a tent or a foxhole, if you will. I shared a hooch with the battalion surgeon. He had taken it upon himself to do something to the local people in the villages around our fire base. It was a joy to me that he would occasionally take me with him when he went to visit a local hospital for people with leprosy. And I went in there curious. Leprosy is a contagious disease, and I want to be in the middle of that. He said, don't worry about it, we're safe. And we were. And we would take medical supplies to this community and get to meet, you know, local Vietnamese people that we were reasonably comfortable with, not expecting them to be an enemy or anybody out to get you. And so it was a fantastic moment. This monastery was run by a group of French nuns who took very good care of all of these people, and they took very good care of us when we would go to visit. Some of you may have noticed I brought my own fire water with me. In Vietnam, we couldn't drink Coca-Cola out of bottles because Charlie would put the glass in the bottle. So I would, depending upon my dependency on Coca-Cola, drinking out of cans, which is not very good when that can was shipped from the United States and who knows how long it's been there. But the important thing was that these French nuns would serve to me Coca-Cola in bottles, and I could trust them, and I enjoyed that. I think that's probably one of the moments in my time in Vietnam that I really take joy and remember. These people were fantastic.
Please speak a little loud. Maybe stand up.
That's for older, we can't hear you.
Outside, please.
What were your biggest learning experiences from being in the military, just like in general?
You want me to repeat the question?
I think I learned how to be like a better mother, honestly. I had both of my babies right here while I was in the military. When Jaden was 4 months old, I deployed to Iraq. And to me, that was one of probably the hardest things I've ever done in my life, was to leave a 4-month-old behind and walk out the door and not know if I'm gonna come back. And so I think I learned to appreciate time with them, and time, you know, as a mother, and giving them whatever experiences I learned or I went through, sharing it with them now as they become older is really big. But yeah, I learned how to be a better mom.
I think for me it was the studying part. I was a field artillery officer, so what we did, we would shoot a 200-pound projectile 5 to 15 miles away to hit a target and land within, 50 feet. And so you think of the math behind understanding, this is geometry basically. 3 points. You know where you're located at, you know where the enemy is, and then you got an observer over here telling you where the enemy is. You draw a triangle, put all that math in the system. This is back in the 80s, so we had sticks and charts and trying to figure out, you had to know azimuths, you had to understand whether or not you were above or below target line based on your location on the ground. So all that math stuff, and I'm not a math guy. So I went to class for that in school, and it took a lot of training, but I got through it. And so I think the biggest thing I got out of the military was that they'll train you, you learn a lot, and you can do more than you think you can.
So for me, I think it was, before I went into the Navy, I was more about getting things done myself, right? I trusted my own intellect and my own abilities to do things without other people's help. And I thought, well, that's cool, I can do what else I can. Well, that's the worst thing in the world when you're in the military, you're working with people, right? So I learned a lot on how to use everyone in the group to get the job done. First of all, more heads thinking is better than one. Okay, it took me a while to get that into my head. I had to pound it in there, but it's definitely true, and it makes things so much better. Plus, everybody has a part in it, so they feel more connected to it. So you're going to be more successful. So I think that's the biggest thing I learned from that. And then as I became an officer, was to make sure that I didn't forget that, and I made sure that I was training everyone, not just selecting.
Well, I mentioned that I was in the Signal Corps. Communications was my business, and it's a very technology-intensive operation. Everywhere you go, you have to know how things work technologically. But the thing that I learned the most was that when I had a problem with a telephone system that didn't work, or a satellite that couldn't be caught, it was dealing with people that worked with and for me to get the job done, that was probably the single most important factor in all that I did.
Probably not. So one more question, and then we can have, you guys maybe move out onto the porch in a few minutes. But let's take one more question. If there is a quick question, and then I'd like you to stand up because this was a very good question, and I want to applaud you. Let's give her a hand. And what's your name? I can't. The rest of them need to hear. Just say it loudly.
Manismi,
And what's your last name?
Malasana.
Okay. Good job, Vanessa. Any other question? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, throughout your experience, what was the most stressful situation that you've been through that you were on the spotlight, and how did you overcome it?
Well, I'll say one thing quick. Majority of our time in the military was not in combat. When you're in combat, like Iraq, Afghanistan, it's a different deal. Because when you're in combat, it's 24/7 all the time. So I don't know how to think about that.
Yeah, that's a hard question. Definitely combat time was very stressful. And again, I had a newborn, and who I left when I was still nursing him. So to me, that was a very stressful time. Postpartum depression is a real thing. And so, dealing with leaving him, to overcome that, there was a way over Skype to record myself reading books. So I would record myself in this little room in one of Saddam Hussein's castles. I would record myself reading a book to him, and then I would mail that little CD home to my mom, who was with him at the time, and they would play it for him.
I got one quick training. I think when I was training on, this is an officer, we're responsible for training our troops because we're only as good as our training and all that. When I was on a hand grenade range in Georgia training, we were throwing live hand grenades. Every new trainee in the military has to throw 2 live hand grenades to get past their test. And I was a lieutenant, 20-some years old, in charge of the hand grenade range. And in the course of a 2-week period, we probably threw, 10,000 hand grenades. But the stress of the initial aspect of giving some young soldier a live hand grenade to throw it over there, that was probably the most stressful time. We got through it. Had a couple close because if you know about hand grenades, there's a clip on it and there's a pin on it. You take the pin off while you're holding the clip, and then it's a 2 to 3 second count after you release the clip. So you're supposed to throw it away and then blow up. And then some people were nervous, and you can tell they were nervous because they're kids. They're 18, 19-year-olds, new enlisted soldiers. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I got my team there, and some of them threw it short. And I'm like, what do you do? Take cover. But yeah, that was probably the most stressful time I had of going through live training exercises, whether it was shooting your M16 rifle range or probably the hand grenade range. It's probably, I think, the most stressful time that I had to deal with because I was in charge and a leader, and again, I'm a lieutenant. And that's the thing about the military. They put you at a young age in high-level responsibility positions that you wouldn't get in the civilian world. And I think that helps you as you become older, that you can deal with different things because you've been there for it.
So, I think where we were at.
Captain Thomas, sorry, Captain Jones, you'll have to speak a little louder because it's like our neighbors.
What are they doing over there? Football or something?
I think they have, this is an Indian American.
All right, so anyway, we had so when you operate a nuclear power plant, they come and inspect you. Every 18 months, all the people come from DC, they come on the ship, they run you through your paces, make sure you can pass your written exam, they give you an oral exam, and then they go out and they do things to the propulsion plant and see how you react to bring it back, right? So they were doing that, and we had what they call we do a drill called a dual plant scram. So in an aircraft carrier, you have 2 reactors. If you scram a reactor, that means it's done, right? They shut it down, they can't do anything now, right? Until you start it back up. So they did 2 at the same time. We only had So now we're just dead stick out in the water, meaning that we have no control of ourselves until we bring one of the planes back up and get propulsion going. So this happened, and what we rely on electrically, because our electricity normally comes from turbine-driven generators, right? So it's driven by steam. The steam comes from the reactor, so if we don't have a reactor, we don't have steam, so we have no turbine. So we have to use the diesel generators I talked about before. We have 4 of them. It takes all 4 of them to start and run to normally bring back propulsion. We had 2 of them catch on fire. I was the engineering officer to watch as an ensign, which is like a second lieutenant. Now, of course, I used to be an E7, so, and the thing was I was an electrician, so I did electric planes better than anybody on the ship probably. So I was in central control as the engineering officer to watch. We had the inspection team there, 2 06s captains, and then we had our engineer, chief engineer, who was a captain, and then we had the commander, who was a reactor officer. And they're all standing behind me. And this happens, and everybody's like, they don't know what to do. Everybody's quiet, right? So I just started thinking and thinking and thinking. I was so worried because I didn't know what was going to happen, but I wanted to get it done. And we're only 4 miles from land. So we're cruising towards land, and that's recombinant current and everything. So I had to get this fixed. We're getting on the ground, right? So I'm working on it, and the hardest thing for me was I think I knew what I was doing. It turned out I did, and we were able to bring it all back, and it was great. But I had people behind me thinking they knew better than me. And my thing was, how do I tell this 06 that he's not right, and not get crushed, and still get the job done? And then I had my enlisted guy sitting next to me that was running electric planes, I don't know what to do. He failed. He just sat there. So I had to take his communication phones off, put them on my head. And I'm giving the orders to the electricians, which is something I'm not supposed to do, but I used to do it. So I said, heck with it, I'll just do it. So I did that, and I was bringing the planes back. Anyway, we got it all back, but at one point I told the 06, you need to either be quiet or take my watch.
The 06 would have been the higher ranking officer.
Yeah, way higher. So he stopped. He goes, okay, I'll let you do it. Then when it got over, I had to go see him. He's like, don't ever do that in front of people. I'm like, sorry. But yeah, so that was a little stressful. So another part, and I want to tell one more quick story. So I was in Tonga on an LST, which is a landing ship tank, right? It's the old one, the big thing comes down the ramp and let tanks off, and it's got a round bottom. And we had a guy that had appendicitis as we were out at sea, and we had to get him to Samoa, right? But we had to go through a typhoon to get there. And it was the only thing we could do, was the closest point where we could get somebody, right? So we're going through a typhoon, which is like a hurricane, okay? You know, I mean, obviously from India, you call them typhoons over here, right?
Cyclone.
Typhoons or hurricanes?
Cyclone.
Yeah, okay, so anyways, we had the typhoon, so we're going to Samoa, and we're literally, the ship is turning this far, each way. I thought the ship was gonna turn over. We were actually walking on the walls, you know how they talk about that? And there was only 7 people on the ship that were not seasick. It was crazy. I mean, you know, I was trying to sleep, you have to tie yourself into your bunk, and then hope you don't fall out. I mean, it was crazy. And then we did that for, I think it was 18 hours. I mean, I was just like, man, pray to that higher being, right? I mean, that is just craziness.
Very stressful event to hear it.
So we all made it. It was all good, but it was scary.
Okay, we'll hear from Captain Thomas over here. Anything to answer, Captain?
Well, let's set aside the fact that I was in Vietnam, because that was the ultimate in stress. But there was opportunities like my colleagues here described, where you're put into a situation where you have to do something immediately, and it needs to be done immediately, and you're not sure you know what you're doing, but you fall back on your training, and you fall back on the fact that you're surrounded by folks that are good at their job, and you work your way through it, and it works. It's a magic, but it works.
Very good. So, I would like you to stand up as well and call out your name.
My name is Lacia Vedamopulo.
Very nice. Let's give her a big hand. So, I know we're at the 11:35 mark. We are a bit behind time because we have to clean up and then take the guests out for lunch. But let's see, any other kid has a question, quick question, because then You can continue asking our 4 guests more questions on the porch. You can take pictures there as well. But any final question from a kid? Anybody? Any kid? Over there, all right.
What was the most
Jahan.
embarrassing part of
Jahan, could you please stand up?
Yeah, stand up
Stand up
there.
and say out
What was
loud.
the most embarrassing part of being in the army?
Most embarrassing. Well, no, well, I'll tell you what, back in the old days when we had our place where we go to bathroom at, it was a wood shed and it'd be 20 toilets lined up with no walls.
Oh.
That's what we had at camp.
Oh.
In like first grade, we had to use those kind of bathrooms.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't
So
it?
you've been there.
Bad idea.
See, Jahan, you're all ready now. You can join the army.
Oh man, I think y'all remember the NBC training?
Oh,
Like we have to go through this.
NBC is
Nuclear,
biological, chemical warfare.
Yeah, so we have to go through this training where they're like, you go through this like wooden shed again, and there's a chemical, what was the chemical in there? I don't know what the chemical was, but it's released in there and it makes, yeah, tear gas. And it automatically makes like snot run out and your eyes, so you have to go in there with your mask on to check the seal. Then you take off your mask and you have to say your full name, your social, your birthday, do 20 push-ups, 20 jumping jacks, 20 sit-ups. By then you've inhaled the tear gas. So everybody runs out that room with like snot just flowing out their nose. It's really gross. That was really embarrassing for me. Because I was trying to be cute. I was in the army, I was single.
Okay, so
Got a visual of that. Look at you all different.
so let's give her a hand for a response from the mother to her son. That's-
Oh yeah.
So, you know, we heard some really uplifting stories, right, from our guests. But I want to test our attention, especially the kids, okay? So I'm going to see what we heard, and, you know, jump in if I'm off. So the first one, we'll start with Captain Thomas here. He shared a very sensitive number. You know, he said so many thousand people we lost during that war. You know, this is a question for the kids. Okay, raise your hand and then I'll pick one. So, how many thousand soldiers did we lose? Let's see. I'm going to go with you.
60,000.
60,000. That's good, right? 60 to 70,000. I think. That's good. Why don't you stand up and share your name, please?
I'm Priyanka.
So you can't.
I'm Priyanka
And last name?
Banda.
Priyanka Banda. Oh, okay. Okay, so now let's go on to the next guest. Which country or which part of Africa, I should say, maybe which country did her parents immigrate from? So, you don't count Jahan and you can't, you're not qualified for this. Okay, so I'm gonna go over here. Could you stand up, please? And which country? Did you hear any country? Yeah, that's pretty good. So, what's your name? Full, loudly. Danya Velkuru? Velkuru. Okay. Thank you. Wow, you're on a roll here. Wow. So now to Lieutenant Colonel Harris. You know, he shared the number for 2021. Right? He said, I think the population was around 300 million. And he shared the number of army, you know, the force, the strength we had of the armed forces. Okay, so you know, I need to pick one. I think you, since you're a kid of an army parent, you probably will have to, you don't qualify. So, I think, did you answer the previous question? Yeah. Okay, so I'll let you go. Why don't you stand up, please, and then yeah, that's pretty good. 3.5 million. Loudly. Very good. Okay, now to the you know, a very good question. This is related to the movie. Okay, so Captain Jones talked about Top Gun. And I think the kid, I don't know if he's still here. He left? Oh, that's good. So, you know, maybe it's a question for the rest of us. Which aircraft carrier was the first Top Gun shot on? Are you sure? Kind of? Okay. Any other hands? Jahan, you want to take a step? Why don't you stand up and huh? We can't hear you.
I'm not sure.
You don't know? Jaden, who wanted to answer? You wanted to answer? What? I didn't hear you. Oh, that's you're in the ballpark. Anybody? Okay, now what do you? Yeah, that's not. No other guesses. How about adults?
First one or second one?
The first one. First one.
Carl
Also.
Vincent. Carl Vincent.
All right. Shashi, please stand up. Yeah, he's Shashi Vishweshwaraya. He leads the Seva chapter of Austin. So Seva, is the one that is sort of a role model in doing service, community service. And so he leads the Austin chapter. They have done lots of stuff over the last several decades, right?
Yep. All over US and in Austin for the last 4 years. Yeah.
So let's give them a big hand.
Yeah, John, I want to say one thing.
Yeah, sure.
People don't know about, at least the Navy, I don't know if the Army does it, but I'm sure they do. But when we pull in the ports, we'll do what they call community relations projects, right? So one time we pulled into Casablanca, Morocco, and we basically built an entire playground out of metal for the orphanage, and we painted this entire orphanage, rewired the whole thing, and got their emergency diesel generator working. We made the national news in Morocco. We did it in like 6 days with 25 minutes. That's stuff that people don't hear about. That's stuff we do almost every quarter. We do something. So I think that's a big part of what we do.
Plus, I want to add on to what he just said, right? So Captain George, this time I'm getting the last names correct. I am familiar with their first names, but when I showed him his bio, his background, his criminal background, I forgot to mention that what he's currently doing is also very exemplary. He's with the Sea Cadets, okay? So that is the Navy's youth development program. So any of you that are thinking of the armed forces, keep Naval Sea Cadets as an option, right, Captain?
It is, yeah. So if you join the program, you don't have to go in the military, because it really teaches you teamwork and it teaches you leadership ability. And I was in the program as a youngster, and that's what got me into the Navy. And it made me do so much better in the Navy because of doing that. So it's just something that helps you out. It'll help you out no matter what you do. We've got people that are doctors, senators that used to be in the Sea Cadet program. So it's a great program. So I do that. I cover 19 states and Puerto Rico for the program, making sure it's being operated properly, and everyone's wearing the uniforms and they're doing all the trainings right. So I stay pretty busy with that. But that's just me. I've always been serve something. So I can't help not do it.
Exactly. I know you started with sharing the story about how you were an orphan and so on, and I think that's an excellent example for all of us, right? To see what you have accomplished, Captain Jones, and everybody else. Okay, so we are running a bit behind schedule, so let's go to the vote of thanks. We'll take 5 minutes for that one, and then what we'll have is we'll have the audience. If you can stay, please move out on the porch, interact further with our guests and Sue as well. Take pictures. And we'll try to take one picture of all of us, right? Maybe one, and we can rotate taking pictures. But let's do the vote of thanks. And so, Ajit, please go to the